Okay, this is my presentation on Ignatius of Loyola, and I am Nick Hylan. So Ignatius is born in Azpeitia to noble parents in 1491. He is the youngest of 13 children. It is because that he is such a young child in his family, being the youngest of 13, that at a very early age his father dedicated him to the church, kind of deciding for him that he would eventually become part of the clergy. Ignatius, however, had different plans. He was always influenced by chivalric literature. The town he was born in, Azpeitia, is in Navarra, which is the traditional homelands of the Basque people. It's also situated right between France and the Iberian kingdoms, at this time Castile. And so it was a very contentious land, whether it was being fought for by the Spanish, by the French, or by the Navarrese themselves, the Basque people. And so kind of this environment of martial adoration meant that Ignatius had a lot of influence to kind of grow up and become a soldier, which in fact he did do. After being a courtier in the Castilian court for a year, where he learned noble etiquette, swordplay, fashion, dance, and courtship, he joined the military in 1509. And he really did this because he really aspired to be like the heroic and chivalric figures that he had read about throughout his childhood. People like El Cid, who is a traditional Spanish hero, King Arthur, and Roland Carling, the nephew of Charlemagne. These were all historic figures who had a lot of mythos kind of surrounding them, a lot of people who aspired to be like them because of how gallant and chivalrous they kind of were. And so he serves in the army until 1521, when he is severely wounded at the Battle of Pamplona. This was a battle fought during a war between France and Castile over who would control Navarra. A lot of the Basque people sided with the French in this fight, and so Ignatius is serving at a Spanish garrison, which is being besieged by the French. And during a 6-hour bombardment, while he is out patrolling the walls, he is severely wounded by a French cannonball, which just about cripples his left leg. Extensive surgery has to be done on it. And it is during that extensive surgery that he kind of has this big change in his life that will go on to define his legacy. All right, so Ignatius is stuck in bed for months on end while he's recovering from this wound, and it is during that time that he asks his sister-in-law for just a whole bunch of books, anything he can read, because he is so bored being, stuck in his bed for so long. And so his sister-in-law gives him some books on theology, and after reading these, Ignatius becomes extremely zealous. Rather than comparing himself, or rather aspiring to be the knights of old, he now aspires to be like the saints of old, especially Saint Francis and Saint Dominique. And so he becomes extremely zealous, and wants to kind of dedicate his life to God and to the Catholic Church. And so once he has healed up, he moves to Montserrat in order to kind of explore this new kind of religious conviction that he now has, and to kind of explore this religion that he is now devoting himself to. So Ignatius wants to explore his faith more, and so he moves to Montserrat. And it is while he's on the road to Montserrat that he runs into a Muslim man. And he wrote in his autobiography that when he met this Muslim man, the man suggested maybe that the Virgin Mary didn't stay a virgin after she gave birth to Jesus. And of course, this is very heretical to all Christians, and especially to all Catholics. And so Ignatius feels that he should kill the man for saying such a thing. And that's kind of what the old Ignatius would have done. The soldier Ignatius, who's a soldier of Christ, he wants to kill the man for saying something so terrible. However, the new Ignatius, the Christian devout Ignatius, would forgive the man, and would pray for the man to be forgiven for his sins. And so it's written that he has this great sort of internal struggle on what he should do, and so he he tells God, he asks God rather, that if he should kill the man, for him to steer his horse after the way that the man went, and that if he shouldn't kill the man, he should have the horse take the high road, quite literally the high road up to Montserrat, which is up in the mountains, and the horse does take the high road without him kind of, turning it. The horse naturally takes the high road. And so Ignatius sees this as God telling him to live a life of forgiveness and one of working for the betterment of others rather than punishing them for their mistakes. And so he goes to Montserrat and he hangs up all his worldly possessions, his armor, his sword. He gives his fine clothes to a poor man and moves to a cave outside of Manresa to be an ascetic monk. And it is while he lives in this cave that he receives many visions of God and of Jesus. And it is also while he's in this cave that he writes or begins writing spiritual exercises, which will go on to be one of his great accomplishments, one of his great works. And it is about how one can exercise their faith and truly get a better understanding of their faith. So that's what he's kind of getting up to while he's in this cave. After a while living in that cave, he decides to go on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Originally, he was planning on staying there for the rest of his life. However, the Franciscans, which is a holy order there, didn't have room to house him, and so he comes back to Europe. Once he gets back, he attends the University of Barcelona, then moves to the University of Paris, where he studies theology and Latin and becomes an ordained priest. It's also while he's at the University of Paris that he'll meet many fellow priests who he will go on to form the Jesuits with. And that's what we will get into here in a second. So founding the Jesuits. So as I said before, he founded the Society of Jesus with six classmates. He received approval from Pope Paul III in 1540 to establish this new holy order. And the Jesuits had a unique thing, which was their unique vows. So while most holy orders or most orders demanded of their priests to swear a vow to poverty, chastity, and obedience, the Jesuits also must vow to be obedient to the Pope. So that's kind of what set the Jesuits apart. And they had a unique tenet of converting others through education. Now, they received a lot of blowback from other established orders who thought that they were too similar to them. They also received some suspicion from the inquisitors of the time. Of course, this was during the height of the Protestant Reformation, and so the inquisitors were looking into any new religious organizations and were suspicious of the Jesuits because Ignatius had originally, received visions that he said were from God, and so the inquisitors wanted to make sure he wasn't doing anything heretical there. Ignatius had also preached to people before he had been ordained a priest, and so there was kind of a lot of people looking into the Jesuits, and originally they weren't able to garner that many members or find much support. So Jesuits' works. So within 25 years of the founding of the Jesuits, they're able to cast off kind of the suspicions of before and grow to have 3,000 members established on 3 continents. These members are working to spread universal salvation around the world. They're established all the way from Brazil to Germany to Japan as they seek to convert especially people who are living on the new continents that Spain and Portugal are discovering at the time in the Americas, as well as people who are in Germany and kind of Central Europe, where the Protestant Reformation is having such great effects. To defend the church there, and also newly discovered lands in the East, such as India, Japan, and China. In fact, Letters from the Near East is a document, a letter that was sent back to Europe from Japan, and it was about Jesuit missionaries' works there in Japan and China, and how there were so many people converting in Japan and China, and how there was this great kind of fervor that was happening in Japan and China, and how great that was. And a lot of people were really interested in this document, not just because it talks about having such great belief in God, but also because it writes about very distant lands that people didn't know about. And the Jesuits highly emphasized education just about everywhere they went. They would establish schools, universities, and colleges to help the people learn more about Catholicism and to achieve universal salvation. So death and sainthood. Ignatius dies in 1556 and is canonized in 1622. This was a very quick turnaround between him dying and him being canonized. Most saints takes them more than 100 years to be canonized. Ignatius was a very quick turnaround, and that's because of how great an impact he had on the Christian world. He's honored due to his emphasis on the importance of education. And in fact, he is the patron saint of education, retreats, soldiers, and Jesuits. Of course, all the things he's a patron saint of had a very large role in his life. Education, because he stressed it so much. Jesuits, because he founded the Jesuit order. Soldiers, because he was one for a great period, a large period of his life. And retreats, because it was on a retreat that he found this new identity that he sort of came to embody. And on the left here in the picture is a picture of his tomb in Montserrat. So the legacy of St. Ignatius, obviously the Jesuit order, which to this day produces high quality priests who are very frequently multilingual, so they can proselytize to many different people in many different parts of the country. He defended the Catholic Church, and the Jesuits defended the Catholic Church against the Protestant Reformation, which led to a Catholic revival in the late 16th century, shortly after he had established the Jesuits. And today, Jesuit universities can be found in 20 states in the US and 47 countries around the world, including our very own Gonzaga. And here are the sources that I used. Thanks for listening.